service includes spraying Roundup on the weeds. So Roundup is a non-selective herbicide. It kills everything. It will kill grass, it will kill perennials, it'll damage shrubs. Typically won't kill shrubs, but will definitely damage them. So you need to be extremely careful about where you're getting your Roundup. And also you need to be extremely careful not to, to walk through it. So as soon as we get this tank ready, is that like ready to spray, Tyler? Okay, the best way to store this is to have this clipped on top of the cap like this. It's supposed to snap in, and this one doesn't, unfortunately. But ideally it would snap into the top of the cap like this. The best way to get this on is to have it on a tailgate, and then you can just kind of get your shoulders in there and slide in, or you can go like this. So once we're hooked up, we can adjust our straps by pulling down our thing here so that we got it even. Alright, and then we're going to have our nozzle. I'm not sure if these things got serviced last winter, but we certainly want to make sure they are. This is our little nozzle point here, which oftentimes will get clogged if you're not careful. And it actually looks pretty clean. So you can see that there's no gook in there. Sometimes there is, and you can just kind of blow out any gook and then put this nozzle back on. If you have the nozzle real tight, it's going to be a finer spray, and if it's loose, it's going to be more coarse. So just crack it a little bit and see what it's doing here. So if you pump this up, this is your pump. So if you pump this up too much, it's going to make the particle size of the water too small, and it's just going to blow and drift. It's just going to be a mist. If it's not pumped up enough, it's just going to be a stream, and not much is going to come out perhaps because of the not enough pressure. So when you're spraying, we don't want to go like this. Okay? If we do that, we're going to then walk across the lawn, and we're going to leave footprints all the way across the lawn. Okay? So whenever you're spraying, you always want to keep your butt behind you and walk backwards. Okay? So you're going to come back like this, and you're going to spray like this here. Okay? We don't have to drown the area that we're spraying. It doesn't have to be, dripping, soaking wet. It just needs to be wet and on the leaves. We don't have to spray it to the point of runoff. So we want to get it wet enough, but not drown it. This should be a quick thing. You should be done rounding up a yard in like 5 minutes or less. This is not like walk around for half an hour. This is a quick thing, and if you keep up with it every day or every week, you are going to have much less of a mess in terms of weeds, and it'll be much less of a chore. So I would suggest doing this every single time you do it. It's much better to spray the weeds when they're like 1/8 of an inch tall. As soon as you can see that it's a weed, that's the time to spray it. If you wait until that weed is 6 inches tall and then spray it, you're going to have a dead weed that looks worse than a green weed, which you're then going to have to weed whack. Okay? So if you get this stuff when it's really small, it'll just disappear. You don't have to worry about it.
And we note on the paperwork if we spray Roundup?
Yes. So you want to just make a little note, Roundup. RU is all you got to say. Okay? So you don't have to write down how much time or anything like that. Just write down RU that you did Roundup. Also, what type of areas need to be sprayed for Roundup?
Sidewalks.
Sidewalk. So like if there's cracks in the sidewalk and cracks in the driveway, we'll call that crack grass, okay? The grass and weeds that grow in the crack, all right? So spray all your crack grass. So along the sidewalks, along the driveways, along the curb, okay? Outside the yard, you know, like on the edge of the road. That's part of our responsibility as well. We can't have a beautifully manicured lawn and have the eyesore of weeds growing taller than the curb, you know, all along the edge of the road. That's not good. So we need to make sure that we keep up with that and spray that crack between the road and the curb. Where else are we spraying?
Walkways, patios.
Walkways and patios. We've got to be extremely careful in walkways because walkways have grass on both sides typically, okay? And if we're not careful, we're going to burn both sides of the walkway, all right? So we need to be extremely careful of that. You know, one thing we might do is, you know, come in one side of the walkway like this here at an angle, all right? And then come in on the other side of the walkway like this here at an angle so that we're not, it's not bouncing over, okay? Because the walkway is typically 4 feet wide, so there should be enough room that if we have it at an angle on each side, we can monitor, you know, where we're spraying and not getting this wet. Although this looks a little bit wet right here. So you need to just be extremely careful about that. All right? So, what else? Mark, do you have any comments for us on spraying Roundup?
Don't walk through it.
Don't walk through is the biggest thing. If you walk through it, you're going to be making footprints across the lawn, and you're going to be out there sod cutting out the turf and you know, re-sodding it, okay? So that's not a good thing. So in terms of mixing our Roundup, do we have a, yes we do, we have a bottle here. Perfect. So, all right, so we talked about all this, about pumping, not too much pump, just enough pump. We don't want it too fine and we don't want it too coarse. So let me just demonstrate this a little bit. So this is kind of a long squirt here. And this is just water that we have in here now, which, you know, can have its uses, and then, you know, we can make it all fine like that. And that can also work in certain situations. So you want to be able to adjust this. Again, you know, if we have this like this and we pump it up, you know, it's just mist. That's no good. Okay, that's just too misty, and you can see
it's going to drift all over.
Just blowing over everything. So, so you want to have even that's probably too much pressure for a bigger squirt. So we want to have, you know, probably more like this is good. And again, it doesn't have to look completely soaked like that. If it just comes along like this, you know, that's plenty. Wouldn't you say, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a couple of things I just thought of it after that. Weed controls is very volatile. Everybody know what volatile means? When it gets hot out, it evaporates and it goes up. Okay, so if you're spraying a mulch bed and there's an oak tree or a Japanese maple tree or something underneath it, you got to be very careful about the heat and humidity, because what happens is it'll rise, it'll smoke that tree in a matter of hours. There'll be no leaves left. Okay, so you just got to be careful of that when it starts to get a little warmer out. It's supposed to get 70, I guess, today and tomorrow, so be careful that, you know, you're not drenching stuff underneath all these mulch beds and everything. The other thing too is, like you just demonstrated, and you'll see it, that you can actually see it going this way when it's a fine mist, okay? The other thing you got to be careful with is vegetable gardens. People are starting to plant their gardens now, so if there's, some people put them in crazy areas, so this stuff will, a tomato, you don't even have to touch a tomato plant, and it'll go. It'll start to wilt, and that's it. So you just got to be very careful, you know, walkways, patios, you know, do your best for the mulch beds at all times, but be aware of what's in these mulch beds, because people will put tomato plants in their mulch beds, believe it or not. So, and again, if you don't know it's a weed, don't spray it, because it could be somebody's perennial or something that they had planted 10 years ago. You know, you never know. So just be careful.
So we talked about crackgrass and all that, and it is okay to do some spraying in the beds if the beds are not dense. All right, if the beds are densely planted and you got flowers all around and all that, no. Okay, if they're kind of big and open beds and there's some crabgrass and weeds and turf grass, you know, if you guys are not being careful and you know, now the bluegrass is coming to seed. So when that bluegrass gets to seed, and if you spray the beds with the mulch beds with grass, you know, in your mowing, and you don't blow it all back out, all that seed's going to go to bed, and it's going to, you know, grow like crazy. It grows like crazy in the mulch bed. It doesn't grow in the lawn. Go figure. So you need to pay attention to that and keep the grass out of the beds. But if you do get some in there and it starts to germinate, just hit it lightly with the Roundup, okay? So in order to fill our Roundup, these here take 4 gallons of water, the backpack sprayer. So first you're going to fill it with water, with 4 gallons. You never put the Roundup in first because the Roundup causes foam. And foam is like the Brady Bunch doing laundry, you know, it just fills the whole room. So you always want to put the water in first, put in 4 gallons, and this is called the tip and pour. We've got our little ounces up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure both caps are on tightly, and we're going to tip and pour. Now, if we're going to do 2 ounces per gallon of water. So how many ounces in a full tank of Roundup?
8.
8. Okay. So this only goes up to 4. So what are we going to do?
Do it a second
Do it
time.
twice, right? So we're going to put it up to 4 ounces. So we've got 4 ounces right here. So then we're going to take this cap off and we're going to tip 4 ounces in. We're going to put the cap back on. We're going to fill it back up until we get 4 ounces. We're going to come back. Okay, now we've got 4. We're going to take this off again and we're going to pour it in. Okay? And then we're going to put the cover back on tightly and just give it a little shake and you'll be good to go. So I wouldn't imagine that you're going to fill this 2 or 3 times a week probably would be a guess. Okay? Maybe only twice a week. It's not something you're going to be filling every day. So you need to make sure that your tip and pour, which you're going to keep on your truck, is full. And we've got containers of Roundup here. So there's a funnel here that you're going to use to fill this up. And I would fill it here as opposed to somebody's yard. But, you know, in occasion you might have to fill it up in somebody's yard. You know, we don't want you to not do the last 5 lawns because you didn't, you know, you had to fill it up. So do that for sure. But if you need to, I would encourage you to fill it up in the morning if you come in. Okay? Any questions on spraying Roundup? No questions. Okay. Thank you. Cut.